When we're doing an exercise, we have to ask the question, are we trying to work muscles or are we trying to move weight? Because there's a big difference between the two. And even when it comes to training for strength, we need to understand that training for strength is not the same as just moving weight. Because even if you're going to do a strength sport such as powerlifting, strongman is probably the only one that doesn't have any rules. They're just like flop the weight up any way you can and wear whatever armor and exoskeleton that you salvaged off of a space battlefield or whatever, forklift, whatever. So, cheat swing. So setting that aside, you go to any other strength sport, there are rules in place. You can't just move the weight any way that you want. So this is something to think about, even if you're saying, well, my goal is to move weight. Was your goal to move weight in the gym, or is it your goal to move weight when you compete or when you test a max? Because there's a big difference there too. And I'm going to get into the whole stimulation side. But this is something I've heard many even powerlifting coaches like Dave Tate say over the decades. There's a difference between building strength and demonstrating strength. So we need to be clear on that, right? When you demonstrate strength, you may be doing something different than you use to actually build it. And again, we need to differentiate that. But in the case of this video, you guys will notice everything I'm doing is bodybuilding type training. I have slowly shifted over in the direction of bodybuilding training to work on my physique. And I'm not really focusing on powerlifting these days. I've done quite a few meets on the platform, judged quite a few meets. I've judged more meets than I've competed in. I still coach powerlifters. I've got powerlifters in meet prep right now. But for my own training, I'm over here trying to build muscle. And we start thinking about building muscle and what's the best way to build muscle. Well, we build muscle by stimulating muscle, by working muscles. And moving weight is part of that, but the moving the weight is not the primary objective. Okay, it's not the objective. We're trying to move progressively heavier weights, and we're trying to do it for more reps and things like that. Why? Because it works the muscles harder. In other words, if you can maintain the same form, if you can do 200 pounds on an exercise for 10 clean, perfect reps, and you over time build that up to 225. Well, I don't care what the exercise is, a deadlift, a squat, a bench press, a curl. You can curl 225 for 10 strict reps. You're probably going to have the biggest biceps about on the face of the planet. And again, that's just the way that it works. Because we still have the fundamental principle of progressive overload, and we've known about progressive overload a long time. I feel like I need to make some videos rehashing that whole topic, so that we understand the origins of progressive overload and how long it's been understood. It's been about 3,000 years officially since it's been documented. So again, the idea of progressive overload is there. But what's the point? It's because that progressive tension. It's because we are placing more tension on a muscle. Okay, and it doesn't mean because we found a better way to move the weight. If you're just finding a way to move the weight easier, right? You see what I'm saying? So let's say you find that on the bench press that if you use a bigger arch and maybe you bring your grip in a little more and a little more leg drive, okay, that you can work towards moving that 225, but you did so at the expense of tension, right? You shortened the range of motion. You actually took the hardest part of the exercise out where there's the most tension pound for pound. Okay, you took that out. And I'm not saying we have to always get those full lengthened positions to get hypertrophy. I want to be clear. I think they're extremely valuable. I don't think they're an absolute requirement. You can do mid-range type stuff and still gain a lot of muscle if you're training hard, if you're going close to failure or to failure and you have progressive overload. But the point stands is that moving more weight or for more reps, if you're changing the form or reducing tension on the muscle to do so, is not working more muscle. In other words, the bench is hardest at the bottom. If you find a way to cut 2 inches out of the bottom and you lift a little more weight, you're not actually working your pecs harder, right? You might be working your triceps in certain points harder, but definitely not in their stretched position, not in their lengthened position. Okay, see where we're going with that? So there's a reason a lot of equipped or big arching power lifters who run really big arches focus really heavily on triceps, because it's a little more tricep dominant exercise in terms of the range of motion. And the pecs do less work if they train that way. Okay? But same thing if you're cheating. So let's say on the curls, you saw me doing some pretty strict curls there. So what happens if I swing a little bit? Happens if I put some body English into it. I used to do cheat curls all the time. Just last year I was doing them. You guys saw me do work sets with up to 185. Were my biceps any bigger than they are now? I'm over here doing strict, super strict, controlled, super strict, no swinging, no cheating with 65 pounds here. My biceps are not smaller. So in that case, was I moving more weight? Well, yeah, but I was also doing it for strength purposes, carry over to certain other lifts, right? But in terms of actually working the biceps, working the muscle I'm trying to work, do you think that was working it harder to do cheat curls? Especially they don't go all the way up to the face and work that function. Do you think that was working the muscles harder? Or do you think that strict is working it harder, especially done to failure? I think the strict is working it harder. Same with the benching. You guys have seen me power bench. Last summer, I did 315 for 8 reps. That's my lifetime best on camera. Using a different grip, using an arch. Belts, wrist straps, everything. Over here, you're watching me do sets of 10 with 245. My chest gets a better pump doing this. And as I get stronger with doing this form, this extremely wide grip, very controlled, right? Flat back, no equipment. My chest gets more stimulus. Same thing watching this incline. Look at this incline benching. That wide grip, controlling it, bringing it down and touching my collarbone with no bounce, no bouncing, using no leg drive of any type, keeping my butt glued to that bench. My chest gets more stimulus. Even with a pretty light weight, this is only 185 pounds. Now granted, I've done benching first. It's only 185 pounds, guys. That is not a heavy weight. Again, considering you've seen me flat bench 315 for 8 with an arch. Okay? So again, it's about working muscle. Are we working muscle? And if we're trying to build muscle, that has to be our focus. And keep in mind, that will make you stronger because a bigger muscle has more strength potential. So don't think that because you're playing with a little bit of light weight on some stuff and working the muscles intently that it's not going to carry over to strength. Because again, myofibular growth will always raise your strength ceiling. Okay? But a lot of times our displays of strength do require a certain amount of technique. They require us to game the system of whatever lift we're doing to get an advantage, a leverage advantage on that specific lift. But it doesn't mean that we need to always be training the lift that way, especially not if we're trying to build the muscles. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys and gals next time.